right. Okay. So we're here with Billy today. I was actually telling him during the break. He's an incredible inspiration for the potential watchers for this episode because we're going to be airing this particular episode for Zuma housing tenants who are mostly international people, that are coming from different countries, and their common point is going to be pretty much UCLA, but the challenge is pretty much the same for everyone. LA looks incredible when you look at, the city from outside.
Sure.
Once you get in, the challenge starts. That smile becomes that question mark. Oh my God, what is this? I miss my country. It was a lot easier. It was a lot better. I miss my home and all that, right? But only the ones who are able to stay till the end, overcoming all the challenges, learning from them, they enjoy the city. I think that's what it is. I think you are one of them.
Thank you. Yes. I think you bring up a great point. I think you look at the biggest companies in the world, you look at the most successful people, it's simply the people that have been around the longest.
Right.
I think there's this commonality. I think you bring up also a great point too of handling issues, right? And being able to stick through those and look at those in a positive way. And it really comes down to being able to, rather than not having tough moments, it's how do we perceive and handle those tough moments, right?
And I'm not going to lie. Time to time, I check social media and I see so many people who claim that they've done it. They've achieved about, this mental stability, financial situation and all that they settled, right? But whenever they start giving advices about how they've done it, it doesn't really attract me so much because it's a very generalized, like a message.
Sure.
Almost hey, be an honest person, be an honest guy and don't lie, work hard and all that, right? I like real stories like yours a lot more than those because I'm able to relate and I can literally put myself in the same situation because I've experienced the same type of difficulties and all that. And seeing that there are other ways of dealing with it, it's a very motivational point.
I think you bring up two great points. I think one, now more than ever, people have become, I think a lot of people struggle to articulate it, but people can feel energy through a screen now more than ever. The social media thing is booming, and I think the reality is people can feel that energy through a screen, right? They can feel that. And I think that what we talked about off camera, but before we even started, it's back in the day, 3 years ago version of me wouldn't be able to connect with people the way that I can now. It's just that the person I've become is more conducive of that, right? And I think secondly, though, brings up a really interesting idea too, that people nowadays need to take more pride, though, in who they give an audience to.
Right.
I think now more than ever, I find it almost unfortunate because I do think entertainment leads still on some level, just the driver in social media.
Right.
And I think it's also been entertainment to a level of self-deprecation for other people.
Right.
You look at some of these streamers and things like that.
Right.
The whole premise is how stupid can I look, right? And I think it becomes this idea where more people, though, need to take more pride in the idea of who they're giving a voice to.
Right.
And I think even more than that, though, I think the people that are given the voice need to take more pride in what they're preaching to people and how they're living and what they're doing. And I think there's so many people out there that have this audience and they preach garbage. They preach absolute garbage.
Right.
And I think
Right.
it's normalized this
It's destructive.
It is, but I think they've normalized mediocrity. They've normalized being average. They've normalized average habits.
Right.
And I don't mean average or nerdy or whatever because you read books and got glasses. I mean average. It's totally made it okay to just have a below average work ethic, below average morals, below average sense of mentality and emotional state of being.
Because there are so many other people like that.
Yes.
And you're not visible in the crowd, right?
Yes. And it's just become this thing where it's because I think relatability has become such a premise of social media now, and people have almost bonded over being below average, you know? And I think something that's a driving force for myself is I always say that your fears have to outweigh your desires. And I have such a strong fear of being average that it outweighs significantly my desire to be great.
How do you define average?
I think that's a great question, right? I think that's where a lot of it comes, a lot of that's the home run question. Right. It's how do you define that? And I define that by not doing what you need to do, more so doing what you want to do. What I mean by that is you need to wake up on time. You know you need to do all these things, and it's almost even to take it a step further, it's being okay with having a poor relationship with yourself.
Right.
I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that at the end of the day, you have a relationship with yourself, you have a relationship with your friends, family, and just like you do with friends and family, your car, house, money in your life, whatever, a lot of people have a poor relationship with themselves. And I like to think of myself as my own friend. And if that friend never showed up on time, that friend never said he was going to do when he needed to do it, he was never there, he always lied to that person, whatever, you wouldn't trust that person. You wouldn't like that person. That person would probably be out of your life, right? Same thing goes for the relationship you have with yourself. If you say, I'm going to wake up on time today, you don't do it. I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the gym, you don't do it. All those things, I think that's being average.
But you're saying, okay, that's a great analogy, right? But doesn't it create a little bit of like a different levels between two of you, right? Because one of them is always monitoring the other one. And the one that is being monitored has to do always the right things and all that. Isn't it a little bit boring for the one that is being monitored?
Explain that. How do you mean?
So because like, you were talking about like literally you need to do the right thing.
Sure.
That means like one side of yours is literally dictating the other side, hey, like you need to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. That means that the side that is talking about the right thing knows what the right thing is.
Well, correct. I think well said. I think that's very true. I think also though it's not about forcing yourself to do the right thing. It's changing your belief systems and the lens in which you're viewing things to start finding enjoyment.
But what if we don't want to work hard? What if we don't want to wake up early? What if we don't want to do the right thing sometimes? Can we not take a break? Like, how do you explain that to that guy who knows what he's doing?
He needs to work. He needs to work harder. He needs plain and simple. In my humble opinion, I think that person needs to work harder. But I think a lot of people struggle or they mess up with their expectations don't align with their current habits, right? And like we talked about.
That's right. That's a good point.
And where
so if you expect to be rich,
exactly,
there are rules that you need to follow.
Well said. I think there's habits that you need to have, and
makes sense.
You don't decide your future. I think your thoughts create your reality, but at the same time, though, your habits decide your future even more than you do.
Then I'm sensing you want money. You want to be rich. You want to be successful more than you are right now. That's why you are in this. Like
absolutely, but
army style,
But I do, but I've found enjoyment out of that. I truly have found passion and enjoyment out of competing with myself.
That's the real skill.
Every day.
You're not really experiencing it in a fashion of like a requirement. It's literally like
it's who I. If you cut me open, that's who I believe.
That's who you are.
And that's the differentiator for people. That's the difference.
So you don't get bored.
No,
you don't get bored.
It's every day. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, I don't want it. That's why motivation, if you operate from an idea of motivation, you've already lost. Mm-hmm. It's discipline is something that's an act that's there to stay. Where motivation is simply an emotion that flows in and out of us. Right. Motivation comes and goes. Right. And there's days where you are not going to be motivated. If you, at the end of the day, only operated and did what you need to do when you felt motivated, you're going to only do things probably 20% of the time.
Right.
Right? And that means that out of 10 days, you only did something 2 of those 10 days, right? Those other 8 days, discipline's what wakes you up. Routine's what wakes you up. Routine and discipline's what keeps you going, right? And so I guess the point becomes I have just found passion and enjoyment out of doing that from a sense of competing with myself.
And it's a skill.
It is. It absolutely is a skill, right?
It keeps you literally running. Yeah, that's great.
And I think a lot of people, though, are in this comparison mindset of like this guy. I truly feel like I'm just competing with myself.
So when I ask you like how you're doing, you're just giving me a reference from like 2 years ago, Billy, right? Is that what it is? You're not really comparing yourself to another person right now.
No, because I don't care. I'm the only one who really exists.
Okay, let's do that right now. Like, how are you doing comparing to 2 years ago? What were you doing 2 years ago and what are you doing right now?
2 years ago, I was in the beginning journeys of starting my fulfillment company, my logistics company. Mm-hmm. And so habits had changed drastically. I didn't see the results. I think my mindset about money was very different. I was on the entrepreneurial journey. I always have been, like we said about the music stuff. But I think, from the idea though, I think what really changed my life was my perception of money. Right. I think I stopped looking at money.
So at the time, you were like literally going for money. That's why you set up the business. You didn't care about like specifics, the difficulties that you were going to go through and all that, right?
I think
I'm going to make money, right?
Very quickly, I learned though that it's a byproduct of helping people. Mm-hmm. I quickly learned that. Mm-hmm. I was sleeping out of my car in Oregon actually for about 4 months, starting my logistics company. And
okay, so let's just put the story in order, right? So you stopped that DJing career and because COVID hit, right? And you had to come up with an alternative business idea.
During COVID, I still was pursuing. Okay. I still was
Did you know that like this DJing wasn't going to last long? That's why you had an alternative on the side? Was it
there was never a plan B. It was never a plan B.
Okay.
It kind of was like once I pursued the entrepreneurial aspect, that's what I did.
Okay.
I kind of disappeared from social. I disappeared from everything for a long
And
time.
how did you end up in the fulfillment like business?
That's a good question. So I was working at a deli.
Okay.
Right. So I moved home from Arizona, started working at FedEx.
Okay.
The night shifts from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay. In LA?
No, in San Francisco.
In San Francisco.
Went to Arizona to San Francisco for about 4 to 6 months. Me and one of my dear family, that's my best friends, that's family to me, Jack.
Okay.
So we were roommates in Arizona. We both were from San Francisco, though. We didn't know each other from back home.
Okay.
We met in Arizona, but we moved back. And then, my dad ended up moving to San Francisco later on in my life. And so he was born and raised in San Francisco. And so we ended up living 5 minutes from each other.
Wow.
And so
okay.
I remember I'd come home from FedEx at 6, 7 a.m. I'd pick him up.
How many years ago was this? The FedEx situation? Like
4 or 5.
5 years ago, you were working for FedEx, handing those like...
At night, the night shift, I was actually the one lifting the heavy boxes in the warehouses and putting them on the racks and whatever.
Okay.
And loading the trucks.
Okay. And what about your friend, Jack? What was he doing?
So he started a clothing company in college. A clothing brand.
All your buddies are like entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That's great.
One thing I will say is I've always been very, very selective about who I share my time, my energy with. And I've always taken a tremendous amount of pride in that. And,
Wow. I feel honored right now.
No,
great.
I mean, in all seriousness though, I've never been afraid to say no, right? And so my point being is I think that sheds light on how much I connect with you and how much
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, right?
Same here. Yeah.
I've always been very particular about who I choose to share my energy with. I've always known there's an idea of guilty by association a little bit, right? Like if you surround yourself with poor mindset people, that's kind of what you're going to end up, right? If you hang out with 5 winners, you'll be the 6th. You hang out with 5 losers, you're probably going to be the 6th.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so he started a clothing company. And that's actually where, the saying that I hold myself to is either get better or you get bitter. Right. And I saw him.
You got a lot of like incredible quotes, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah.
You don't forget what you read, man.
A lot of these things I came up with myself.
That's
a lot
amazing.
of them, actually, believe it or not. I've always been creative like that. But so, and I think I've also heard sayings and added my own spin to them as well, kind of thing.
Right.
But so, his clothing brand picked up as the music started kind of dying off for me because everyone was at home shopping, the COVID money hit, whatever. And he, to this day, one of the few people that I think keeps up with my work ethic as well. So I have a tremendous amount of respect.
And you guys never been partners in the business?
We've done a few things here and there.
Okay.
I think we've always been very careful actually about mixing business and pleasure.
Yeah.
We've always been very careful.
Right.
Jack's father, Mr. Lyons, who's an entrepreneur himself, very smart guy. He who I have a tremendous amount of respect for as well. He said the only ship that sinks is a partnership.
Wow.
That's a good quote, right? And so,
I want to meet him.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
But and so that's something Jack and I have always taken to heart, and so we've always been very particular. I think now actually we're kind of come together officially on a venture. That the people at home will see soon.
So it's not going to sink? You think?
No, I don't think so. I think I firmly believe that.
You guys have been matured and all that. Right?
Yeah, and I think I think. That's a good question, but no, we wouldn't do that if we thought it would, right? I think the way we are now, and what I think it really comes down to is the ability to have those difficult situations.
Right. I mean, I
those difficult conversations.
Right. I got a kind of like an example to give right now. So the first time I came to LA, of course, housing wasn't easy to afford, right? And I had to find roommates. And,
what a different life, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, looking for a roommate, especially if you need money or if you want to share the rent and all that, you don't really have a lot of
options, right?
Yeah, you're not picky, right? Literally, someone
beggars can't be choosers.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Someone who is able to afford half of the rent, is your direct candidate. Don't even need the,
exactly.
Yeah,
you don't even know what you do. Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No need an interview there, right? You need to see a bank statement. That's all. And
not even that sometimes, right?
Exactly. I've had certain experiences with different people as roommates, but the ones that really worked out were the ones who I became like roommates without being friends. Like in the very first place, right? We knew what the arrangement was, right? What the arrangement was. We were still around the same table, like as much as we were able to have like lunches, breakfast, or dinner. We were talking about like certain things, and they worked out so well. as roommates. We were so respectful and all that. But then on the other hand, I got friends, good friends from Europe, from Turkey, from Istanbul, right? At some time, we broke bread or whatever, right? The expectation was really high.
Yeah.
And the roommates situation didn't really work
Probably
out.
ruined the friendship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't really work out.
I think the saying goes, if you want to stop liking somebody, start living with them.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think...
Or take a vacation.
Yeah, that too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, Jack and I lived with each other for, besides San Francisco, when we moved to LA together, that 6-month span.
So you were still good friends?
Oh, Jack is my best friend.
Wow.
Jack, because we've been through a lot together. That guy has seen me through it all, dude. That guy has seen me, barely making it in the door, so obliterated kind of thing, all the way to here, and he's that dude's always rocked with me, man. I take a bullet for that guy, seriously. And I think, but I think that's a testament, though. You bring up a great point. You bring up a phenomenal point, actually, where I think the best partnerships do stem from business first, and if you happen to be friends,
right,
great. Exactly. If not, it's actually probably better if you don't even get there. I think we've been through so much, and we've gone through other roommates and things like that, him and I, and we're the two that stuck it out together.
Right.
I think a lot of the people that we've lived with or been close with develop you either get bitter or you get better. And I think they developed a little bit of the bitterness.
Absolutely.
Quite truthfully. And that's something that we never developed with each other.
Right.
And did how much, I think we're both 26 going on 27. And we have such a great understanding of each other and having those hard conversations and things like that. And I think I want to say something about that too really quick is I think also partnerships, in a sense, you have to be very clear about your role.
Right.
You have to be very clear. You're meant to do this, and I'm meant to do this, right? And I think that's where we both have a unique skill set that complements each other very well. And I think
two partners who have the same skills, who have the same type of strength, will never work out.
Yes, it's going to be. And we both believe in scale-inducing activities. Right. We don't. I think you can butt heads really. Interestingly as well, from the idea of somebody wants to stay mom and pop and somebody wants to just induce scale, grow. And we both have that mindset of let's grow. And I think we've both been doing now this game for, not as long as other people by any means, but we've had enough tangible experience to know where to go, where to drive down and where to pull back, kind of thing. And so I think my point being though, is we share that mindset of let's delegate the right way. Let's bring people on in the right ways. We understand that, the ways you get to 1 million is very different than the way you get to 10 million kind of thing, right?
You allocated quite a time for your father and Jack now. So we're able to write their names down as the, important characters in your life. That's incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good. I think, that's
awesome. That's a great quality.
Thank you.
Just to be able to name a couple of people,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's great. Yeah.
I've always been a believer in that, and I think through shining light on other people, the light somehow gets shined back on you, and I think so that's been and I think that's been a good thing.
Your fulfillment space was basically
3PL logistics,
through FedEx. So you were.
That's interesting that you say that. That is where some curiosity sparked.
Okay.
Some curiosity sparked. So I was working at the deli, so I went from FedEx to then moving to LA. I was working at a pizza place for a day. I was not the king, but I a few times would work for 3 days, and I was I can't stay here.
So you were delivering pizza?
No, I was working at the pizza place,
making pizzas.
Yes, okay. Or not really making kind of doing the salad bar, that kind of stuff.
I see.
Right.
I used to work for a restaurant too.
Yeah,
my first time in LA. Yeah.
So I was doing that, I quit that, whatever. Then I was working at CVS as an assistant manager.
So you were one of those CVS guys. Okay.
And let me tell you, my friend, that was probably the toughest one.
Really?
I remember crying at the register one day.
Why?
Just saying, there's more to life. I was probably one of the peaks of the addictions. That's where I started drinking in the middle of the day. I started doing some stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, skipping work kind of thing. That was really tough. And that was where I kind of decided, okay, music is
That was happening in LA?
Yes.
Which CVS were you
Studio
working?
City on Ventura.
How long did you work for them?
Oof.
Years? No.
Less than years.
Less than
6 months, 8 months, 6 months.
All right.
And I'll never forget crying at there. And I got COVID on there. I got COVID there one day.
It's a guarantee.
And I never went back. And so that was that was probably the most suicidal I ever was.
Wow.
Was those types of music. I was the end of, the end of like when I would perform and you'd play in front of a lot of people, that was pretty tough some days too. But that CVS thing was when I was like, what is any of this worth? And I say that, I say that pretty.
Why would you like feel that way? Because would you see yourself really low?
I think that there was this, I think it's a really good question. I think there was this thing in my head of expectations didn't align with the work I was putting in on day to day. You got to remember too, I was doing something that was working. And so it became very difficult to now, from an ego's place, let go of that and find new ways of doing things.
You had different expectations.
Yes.
And look where I end up with.
Exactly, right? And so that was kind of a tough thing to swallow, if you will. That was a tough thing to swallow. And like I said a little bit ago, it took me some time to rewire the brain, and I think at that time though too, I developed this addiction to being sad. More than a substance or anything.
It is an addiction to be sad.
I think the thing is though is that people very seldomly go out and do the wrong thing on purpose.
Right.
They never say, let me go mess this up on purpose.
Right.
They have this belief system and thought process that what they're doing serves them best.
Right.
So therefore, I need to find and change my belief system on what serves me, what doesn't.
Right.
You got what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And so, so I think in that moment, I found so much comfort in the idea that feeling to me of being sad like that was a discomfortable decision for me.
Right. Wow.
Wow. And I think a lot of it came from the music of being this sad, emo, like kind of like DJ, mysterious DJ kid.
Right.
And like people
Moody, right?
Kind of like angsty, like mad at the world a little bit, whatever, flipping the camera off all the time, like that that carried over, and it didn't work. It didn't work.
Wow.
And the big driver was, I'm tired of being like sad. Like I'm tired of living like that.
Right. Aren't you worried about knowing yourself this well? Because you can't play games with yourself.
Let me tell you, my friend, that's a great question. That's the first time someone's ever, out of all the questions I've gotten in this life, that's the first time someone asked me that, but I think about that a lot. And I think, I think some people, they see the growth and they see all these things and they, whatever it may be. But I think a lot of people underestimate that, like, if a lot of people spent a day in my head, they'd struggle. Right. I think my brain moves.
You're an overthinker.
It moves so fast. But what I did though, is I stopped letting that be my kryptonite or my demise and be actually the reason of success. That's from meditation and these things. I actually learned how to
What kind of meditation do you perform?
I do a lot of, a lot of it stemmed from another guy, Jonathan, who, him and I had our parted ways a little bit. Of yours. But him and I don't speak much anymore, but was a real pivotal moment for me of my spiritual journey. He taught me a lot. And that's where life really changed. I like to say he raised my money vibration a little bit.
Wow.
He kind of, he showed me some of like, the bungalows and the San Vicente bungalow, like these private members kind of thing, or like just these things where you're like, oh, whoa, there's people out there that make a lot a lot of money.
That guy, his name is Joe Dispenza.
Yes.
He's got this very interesting theory that I started believing more and more every single day. He's actually associating quantum physics to this whole possibilities in the future.
Oh, it's all that it is. I think it's all from a quantum physical perspective, that's all that it is. Right.
And it gives this incredible power to now.
Yes.
Because now is the key for the future. You just need to change your position.
The future and the past don't really exist. From a quantum physical perspective, it doesn't really exist, right? The only thing that really exists is here and now. Because when you talk about the past, you're talking about it in the here and now, right? Talking about the future, it's kind of a difficult perspective to grasp. It takes me even sometimes to grasp it, But Joe Dispenza is phenomenal. I think he has some great things to say, and so I'll do some guided chakra meditations, but mainly what I do, and this kind of my own twist to what I do, all right? And so, Bear, I know this will make sense to you, but some people at home, this might be a little bit, what is this guy talking about? But what I'll do is, I'll do breathing exercises for about 3 to 5. I turn on a timer of about 35 minutes or so. And so, about the first 3 to 5 minutes, I'll do some breathing exercises. Just in longer out breaths, like the Neville Goddard, like in for 6, out for 8, making sure that the breath out is longer than the breath in. And then what I'll do from there is I get on my back, right? And I'll kind of roll my eyes up to my head a little bit, right? To really get in that meditative state. And then after that, what I'll do for about 30 minutes or so is I'll think of things I'm really grateful for now, in the present moment, that I'm just beyond grateful for.
So you take a couple of hours then? Like literally like an hour?
I probably meditate for an hour a day, twice a day.
Morning?
30 days. Yes, morning and...
So it's like 2 hours a day?
No, it's about 30 minutes.
30 minutes and 30 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. That's what
but I think the busier you get, the more you need to be meditating.
All right. I like to put a little disclaimer for the people who are watching this. I know we're going very fast, right? and we sound like everything is super easy. We become super happy because we meditate, and then we become very rich because we work really hard, right? Ladies and gentlemen, you only see like a very
the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely. I think the main point here is that it does take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of desire. And that's what you have, and that's the biggest thing you have right now.
Yeah.
So you're able to convert.
That's a phenomenal point.
Yeah. You're able to convert it into a lot of great things people want for, right? But there is no shortcut here.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend.
There is no shortcut.
It's almost where you become bought into the idea that if you are in pursuit of a shortcut, it's almost let me do the exact opposite of that because you know it doesn't exist, right? And I think on the meditation aspect, my life really changed in that aspect though was when I stopped thinking that like. It's not about having more positive thoughts, it's about having less negative ones.
Right.
And what I mean by that is if you have a negative thought arise, what'll happen is next time you have a negative thought, what'll happen is people try to say, let me pound it with more positive thoughts.
Right.
Now you just have a cluttered mind. Right. A clear mind is a sharp mind, and a sharp mind is what you want. Right.
Exactly.
So it's really about the idea of alleviating the negative thoughts, removing the negative thoughts, having a clear mind. Right. So when you have that negative thought,
because they come.
Exactly. You're human.
They're here.
They're not going anywhere.
Right.
Especially
Exactly.
the more risk you take on, the more stress you take on, they're not going anywhere.
Right.
The real skill though is having a clear mind so then you don't lie to your mind doesn't lie to yourself when you have those negative thoughts and turn that really excitement into anxiety or vice versa, whatever it may be. You can look at it for what it is, be the observer of your thoughts and let it go.
Right.
And like we said a little bit ago, it's a bad thought doesn't turn into a bad day, bad month, a bad year, etc. Right.
Because if someone tells me like, hey, I killed all my negative ideas, I won't believe that. But if you're able to observe those and you know the reason, source and all that, I think that's more reasonable story. Because there is no way for you to kill all your like a bad ideas.
It's not going anywhere. Those things aren't going anywhere.
But you need to observe it. You're able to observe it. And once you see that like interaction between the negative and positive, then you know what to do. Like you literally know what to do, how to position yourself and all.
What do I believe in order for this thing to be true in my head right now? Right. What do I have in place in my head right now that makes me feel or believe that this is true as an emotion?
Right. And I want to get to the business side, right?
Yeah.
So because I'm so curious, like a guy who is as spiritual as you are, energetic like you.
Sure.
So how did you end up? Like, how did you set up that business? What was your reasoning?
What
was your like motivation in that, right?
So I was working at the deli, started selling on Amazon myself, right? And so through that time, though, I had heard the saying that goes, this big saying that was in my head, right? So I was selling on Amazon. I was dealing with the cash flow issues, right? Like the inventory-based businesses, you got to feed the beast more and more and more. It's difficult. If you don't have much, you're not making much money, right? And then you got to, there's difficult to pull money out of the business and then continue to grow the business at the same time. You got to keep
feeding it, right?
Exactly, right? And especially from a cash flow based business like that, inventory based business, right? And so I then that moment said, okay, I really like this e-commerce space. It's booming. And a common saying I heard a lot was the idea of the people who made the most money during the gold rush were not the guys who mined the gold, but the guys who sold the picks, the axe, and the shovels.
Exactly.
Right.
Wow.
So then I said,
what a mindset.
So then I said, okay, how can I go be a service-based business with no cash flow issues, right? Not really to shell out money, to make money to these e-commerce guys, right? How can I have no cash flow issues and be paid on a basis where whether they succeed or not, I'm still getting paid? Right. You get what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And so from there, then it said, okay, let me go start this fulfillment company. Because like what you said as well, where we connect on that is, a lot of your best inventions and best ideas come from your own personal life finding solutions, right?
Because that was your difficulty when you were doing the Amazon thing, right?
Because during Q4, the guy who's doing my fulfillment blew it for me. He blew it. And so the Q4, there's supposed to be this big quarter, just totally ruined.
Wow.
And so I said, and he was this older gentleman, right? And so if I am having this issue, there must be a ton of other people that are having this issue. And then I said, the space is proven. Like there's a lot of companies out there that are fulfillment companies that are.
Can you tell everyone about fulfillment? What is it?
Sure. Exactly? So like, let's say you sold T-shirts on the internet, right? And you don't want to be the guy. When Jimmy in North Dakota buys your T-shirt, you don't want to be in your garage packing that order and shipping and printing the label and shipping it to Jimmy. What happens is you order your T-shirts from China, wherever you source your product from. Send it to my warehouse. We receive it for you. We store it for you, and then when Jimmy in Idaho buys your product, we pack it, ship it, pick, pack, ship it, etc. Right? And so we handle that in transportation, all those kind of things, right? Basically doing the dirty work for you, if you will, right? Letting you focus on more leveraged, higher leveraged things, right, in your business, right?
Because it was kind of like a challenge in the first place, you were able to set up a business out of it, right?
Well, and then I also realized, though, that if I'm having this issue, somebody else most likely is. At the same time, I'm dealing with these old people that are, it's,
Right.
the market was proven, but there needed something to differentiate in there, right? I thought I could do it cheaper and faster. That was my big thing. I thought I could do it cheaper and faster. Right. And so
it's almost like a real estate type of thing, right? You need to have a warehouse type of
correct. And so the next phase of my company is owning the land I operate on. But from correct, that was where, now learning back, I still had to put the down payment for the warehouse. I still had to do some of those things, right? And so
and you need people to operate, right?
Well, yeah, the initial time though was just me and sleeping in my car and sleeping in the warehouse, doing it myself.
So you started from a very simple setup then, right?
Oh,
as a
1,000 square foot warehouse, if not less, like a 600 square foot warehouse.
Wow.
And so, but that's where sales comes in, right? So that's where I changed my life, because when I was sleeping out of my car, I closed like 60 clients in like 3 months.
How?
Let me tell you, I got on the phone with every single person. I would go inside a Discord, Amazon Discord communities, and I would get kicked out of the communities for DMing people so much.
Wow.
And I just would
This remind me of your DJing time. Knocking on the doors of the clubs and all that,
going back to I really don't care if you tell me no. I really don't care if you tell me no.
All right. At least if you're watching this right now, I mean, if you have not really got any of the points, I want to beg you here, right? Okay. I want you to pick up one single point here, all right? Just get out of your comfortable bed or whatever place you're in, right? Start asking people what you want, okay? Try to get it. You'll be able to do it, There is a real example here. Billy, he's done an incredible job, in different fields, right? It's not only one single industry. In every single field, no hesitation to knock on the door. If the door is not open, he's like, open it. I know you're there, right? Yep. You break it almost, right?
And I think that confidence, thank you for saying that. I really, truly appreciate it. And
this is the real story.
It is, right? Yeah. That confidence, though, comes from my day-to-day habits. Knowing that what I do when no one is watching, that's where the confidence comes from. Because then when I knock on that door, I'm going to annoy you and hound you. But then when it's my time to perform, there's no doubt that I'm not going to execute. Right. I know I'm going to execute. Right. So therefore, for me, I'm doing you a service by knocking on your door so many times. Because I know I'm going to be a better service provider than what you have right now. Right. So you know what I mean by that? And so that's where knowing that.
You just need to know that I'm better than what you have right now.
You just need to taste, you're doing me a favor. You need a taste of it. Yeah. Right? And so exactly. And so that's where my life really changed. And I, closed my first 7 figures worth of deals without a sales script, without anything. With just getting on the phone and just closing people from just pure passion, realistically.
And they see that as a business owner, you're there. If they experience a problem, you'll be kind of interfering and all that, right?
That's where I learned a ton of the ideas of scale, though. Because when I say that, is because I realized I've only got so many hours in a day. And I'll never forget, I was looking over one of my first employees' shoulders. Because I would not micromanage, but at the same time, though, I'd make sure they were packing things properly. Right. And then I looked over this guy's shoulder one day, and I looked at myself, I said, I want to have a $100 million fulfillment company.
Wow.
I'm not going to be able to watch every package that goes out the door. Right. If I want locations in different states, I'm not going to be able to be in multiple states at one time. Right. So therefore, then it really made me realize the real emphasis comes on the systems I have in place and the people I hire. Because I only have me being the only sales guy, me being the only warehouse guy, me doing all those things. Eventually, I was going to die from exhaustion. Right. You know what I mean? And so you got to be able to let go of a little bit of control,
But just to experience that type of the process of the business today is valuable for tomorrow, right?
That's where I think a lot of people understand. Don't grow too fast. Right. Because you have to understand every facet of your business to then be able to know and delegate those tasks to someone that okay, this person can handle it.
We're going a little bit out of time here, but I'd like to listen to you more.
Yeah.
So one last thing I would like you to really help me with. Like I said, there are so many people, hopefully, watching this, especially people who just got to LA, right? Sure. And among our possible tenants, maybe, of Zuma Housing, you'll have quite a fan, right? I'm sure there are going to be a lot of fans. What would you like to tell them? Okay, they're coming from a different location, different country, right? And that's your camera right there.
Yeah.
They just got to LA today and they feel miserable. They don't feel good as you do right now. What do you want to tell these guys?
I think that's a great point. I'll look at you guys over at home, right? And so I think there's a few things. I think you have to understand first and foremost that the uncomfortable decision will never go away. That uncomfortable decision to go make that first jump, that first leap, that first handshake, it's never going to go away. The real emphasis is really being able to change the way we perceive that uncomfortable decision. Right? It's starting to look and love those uncomfortable decisions because, as we know, and we've talked about a ton of this conversation.
Right.
On the other end of every uncomfortable decision is a tremendous amount of growth, right? And so it's understanding and being in pursuit of growth. The only person you're competing with is yourself. Someone's opinion of you does not matter. At the end of the day, as long as you're morally dialed in, you're morally there. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is your opinion of yourself, as long as you are proud of who you are. And what you do when nobody is watching is really defines who you are. It really does. And you can lie to everybody else, but you can't lie to yourself. And so it's being in pursuit of those uncomfortable decisions because you know it's going to help you grow. I've met so many people, probably 80% of the most successful people I've met in here are people who are not from LA, or maybe not even from this country, that came with very little money, very little understanding of what's going on. And there's this idea of when your back is against the wall in some way, all right, that's what produces the best results. So don't be one of those people that your back has to be against the wall to get you to move. But at the same time, though, to manufacture some urgency for yourself, find ways to have your back against the wall. I'm not saying go pursue dumb decisions, but at the same time, though, go find ways that make you tick and manufacture some urgency for yourself. And really, you'll see what you're capable of. Right? And last, to leave you guys with this is stay confident, stay persistent, stay humble, all right? And look at every situation as understanding that God of the universe really does have your back and it'll never steer you astray. When you stay positive, you observe what's going on, you will always be able to extract a positive meaning from any situation.
Billy, well said. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible learning for me. Thank you so much. I feel like we're going to do more shows and episodes like this.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. I mean, this was the first show, and we were able to deliver great
Start
messages
off with
here.
A bang,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Billy.
Thank you for having me, seriously.
Awesome. Very good.